It is being recorded in compliance with the recent revisions to the FOI open meeting statutes. A link to the audio recording will be available on our website within 24 hours. All lines have been muted. If a member of the executive committee wishes or needs to address the chair, please take yourself off mute. We will remove the mute buttons for executive committee members when the chair asks for comments. And as in the past, the chairman has allowed for additional time when asking if there are any questions or comments. And finally, a friendly reminder to executive committee members and staff, please remember to identify yourself each time you address the committee through the chair. And with that, I am going to, you're ready to begin, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to log off and rejoin the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Well, can anybody hear me?
Yes, Matt, you're good.
All right, great. Okay, well, good afternoon, friends, fellow regents and staff. It's nice to hear your voices, and I miss you. It's been a lonely and solitary existence for so many of us. So here we are connecting to get some important business done and get some updates on what's going on. So why don't we start by just getting some of the basics out of the way. Could I have a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes?
So
This
moved.
is Naomi.
All right, and may I take Regent Balducci as our second and call for a vote? Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? So our minutes are approved. And now we'll turn to President Ojakian for an update on the system and campus level response. And with much intrigue based on the messages I'm getting about are we going back to school in the fall, the future planning topic, which is not an easy thing for any of us in any kind of business to think about right now. But Mark, with again a great thank you to you and to the team and to our campus leadership across the system for your good work during this extraordinarily challenging time, and with our heartfelt appreciation and respect for the students who are enduring this and the faculty supporting them. Just ask you to tell us what you think would be the highlights that we ought to know about to date and think about for the future regarding COVID-19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a very brief set of comments this afternoon. You may remember that at the last board meeting, I gave quite an exhaustive list of the things that we had been doing since we were forced to close our campuses. I believe it was March 12th or 13th, and start to deliver all of our educational courses online. So, since that time of the last board meeting a couple of weeks ago, things have proceeded, and I think in a very positive direction. Students continue to take their courses online. Faculty continues to do incredible work in providing the students with those opportunities. Most of our labs are online, so things are moving along. Not that there hasn't been challenges, but I think with the quick pivot we needed to make from in-person to online, everybody has done an incredible job. Just as an example, one of our community colleges did a survey of their students to find out what they thought of the transition to online, how helpful was the administration in providing them with updates, how was the faculty guiding them through this very challenging time, a series of questions. And they had quite a good response for a survey. And I would say between 70 and 90% of students felt that despite the pandemic and the difficulties in transitioning to online learning, that things were going very well, and they were very appreciative of the administration and the faculty's support. So we continue to make, I think, great strides in this area, and we're coming towards the end of the year. We will have a number of virtual celebrations acknowledging the incredible work of our students, faculty, and our staff. But two specific things I wanted to draw to your attention today. As you may remember, we had received funding under the Federal CARES Act for higher education. Our system received $54 million to be divided in half between emergency financial assistance to students, and the second half to go directly to institutions for a number of areas, including reimbursement for expenses incurred as a result of COVID-19. When I think I last spoke to the board, the guidance from the Department of Education was very flexible in allowing systems and institutions to provide financial assistance to as many students as possible. Since that time, the DOE reversed that guidance, reversed it significantly, which meant that it significantly reduced the number of students who are eligible for this support. We shared our concerns in the letter to the Secretary and our congressional delegation. I know the board did receive copies of those letters, because the concern was that nearly 30,000 students in our system would be impacted by this change and would not receive any financial assistance. So we're continuing to work to see if we can get that guidance relaxed. And in the meantime, we're starting to send out the first wave of financial support to our students currently. So I'll keep you posted on that as this moves along. And the second thing is just, we've been engaged as a key player in the Governor's Reopen Connecticut Advisory Committee on higher education, providing input into the planning for the fall. Alice has done an incredible job of leading our systems effort on this initiative, and we expect the governor to announce further guidance sometime this week, and we will expect to have that guidance allow us to move forward with our planning. All of our institutions are now engaged in a planning process to identify ways to reopen in the fall of 2020. This includes meeting with faculty, staff, students, union leaders, and others to identify options, challenges, new ways of doing business that will help us reopen safely when possible. Those committees are working under a very shortened timeline. It's our expectation they will have recommendations up to a system-wide steering committee by the middle of May, with then us making early determinations by the end of May on when and how to reopen. As I said, the advisory committee has put together a tentative, I think, draft plan, which the governor is reviewing. And I think the governor will have more to say on that once he reviews the plans and makes modifications in the next couple of days. So that is the extent of my update, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the committee?
I'm sure I'll have more to say at the board meeting when the governor announces the plan and the specifics of the plan. But until then, I sort of have to give a high-level overview.
Yeah. I don't want to ask you to parse this too much and just be candid if this is unknowable at the time. The way you phrased your characterization of planning towards fall, it sounded as if the intent is to plan ways to reopen campuses in a way that would be different than teaching online in the fall. Are we there yet in management's view, or not?
I think part of our planning efforts is to plan to reopen in the fall in some way. And that will be driven by a number of statewide directives around public health. It'll be driven by the parameters of the governor's reopening plan. I would imagine that we will be looking at not only ways to reopen, but also ways to quickly pivot and close, should we need to.
Right.
As you know, the governor has made reopening tied to a number of criteria that need to occur in the overall, public health arena. And so, assuming that each step along the way continues to show a decline, which would lead us to move to the next stage, that's what we are planning for, but understanding that at any moment in time, this could change.
Right. Contingencies upon contingencies. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Correct.
Matt?
Mark? Oh, go ahead, Merle.
Okay, I didn't know if, has there been any thought like to doing 8-week semesters instead of full semesters? So in case there is a need to close, at least students may have completed half of their work?
There's a number of opportunities to consider those kinds of variations. Those will be part of, I think, the governor's reopen plan, which will list some creative ideas that have come forward, many of those from our team. And as our teams are looking at possible reopening scenarios, those are things that they're looking at as well. 8-week scenarios starting in October. There's a number of variables that we are looking at in terms of reopening, and we are, going to be creative in how we look at this. So yes, Merle, there's a number of opportunities to look at those kinds of options.
Thank you.
Mark, it's Naomi. What, if any, is the conversation around testing in these opening plans?
There's a lot of conversations around testing, Naomi, and you will see that, I believe, as part of the governor's reopening plan. There's a lot of staging. There's a lot of testing requirements. This is going to be driven in large part by the public health needs of the state and of the different communities. And so testing, you will see, it may vary by constituent unit. It may vary the numbers of times you need to be tested. I would imagine there would be isolation plans. This is a whole, reopening effort that is going to have a lot of those contingencies tied to it. So I would say that there will be a lot of testing requirements in the final plan once we see it and the governor announces it.
You're talking about COVID testing, just to be clear.
Correct. Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, thank you. Thanks for keeping us posted. Certainly a topic of tremendous interest among, I guess, our constituents, so to speak. Okay. Well, let's move next to the Students First agenda item. As the years-long pacing of various milestones and markers and tasks is achieved towards the implementation of the community college organization, we have imminently an updated presentation to make to the accreditors We have, I think, very clear guidance from them on some of the things they expect to see in the way of progress. And one of those is before us today, and that is what indeed you would call the new community college system. For purposes of discussion and presentation, I'd like to request a motion to approve the proposed resolution concerning Students First.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have Balducci and Harris as first and a second. And now I'll turn it back to you, President Ojekian, to talk about the recommendation, some of the background, and what we're doing here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to reiterate your initial comment that we will be going back to NETSI in June, regardless of if it's in person or virtually, to present our progress to date and our 2-year implementation plan. And as you indicated, there's a number of deliverables that will be in place by the time we do submit that modified plan. And the item before you today is one of those. So, today you're considering a very important matter, and that's naming the single college. As I indicated, we're in the process of preparing our transition plan to be submitted to NETSI in June, highlighting the work already accomplished and the additional work remaining in preparation of the launch of the one college in 2023. And as you indicated, this is a part of the submission, which should include the name of the new college. So after careful review of our options and in consultation with our partners at O'Donnell Company, who have been a key component of our marketing efforts system-wide, I am recommending that this committee move Connecticut State Community College forward to the full board's consideration as the name of the future college. We considered 3 options in making this recommendation: Connecticut Community College, Connecticut State College, and Connecticut State Community College. As you see from the staff report, each option has its pros and its cons, but I am recommending Connecticut State Community College because at a time when real change is needed to the way our community colleges operate and deliver educational services to our students, particularly on the student success and equity front, this option marks a departure from the status quo. It signifies a new identity that builds on the past, but speaks to the future. It represents the stature of the future college, which will be one of the largest in the country with 80,000 students and prestigious degrees and hundreds of academic programs. And it continues to show the strong community connection that makes our community colleges such great places to pursue an education. I want to say a few words on the process of putting forward this recommendation. It had been my hope to solicit community feedback before putting this name forward this afternoon. Over the last few months, we had hoped to put the 3 suggestions in front of students, faculty, and staff and have them submit their comments and ideas for the board's consideration. Unfortunately, COVID-19 threw a wrench in those plans. Since the middle of February, when it became clear that we would have to make some modifications to the way we provided education to our students, that has been our primary focus: keeping them safe, keeping them healthy, and keeping them on the road to academic success. However, the naming of the college is just one step in the process of branding the new institution. More important than the formal name will be the colloquial name or abbreviation that will be commonly used to identify the college, the determination of what each individual campus will be called, and the development of brand materials. It is my intention those processes to include significant feedback from community college students, faculty, and staff, and to take place in the next 2 years as we prepare for the opening of the college for the 2023-24 school year. I will be in touch with the CSU community on next steps, but I want to be clear that today's proposal only calls for the naming of the college, while the campus identification and branding processes will happen in the future. So today I'm asking the executive committee to move forward my recommendation naming the single accredited college, Connecticut State Community College. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So let's open it up for questions and discussion. Would any of the regents care to comment or ask questions?
Yeah, Rich Balducci, just quickly, Mark, has this name or either of the other two been kind of run by NETCHI to see what their thoughts were? I know it's not the only part, but it is a critical part of our acceptance by them.
No, because they have no jurisdiction over exactly what the name is. They, I think, are just looking for us to have a name to call the institution. As I think I've reported in the past, we need to have an institution for them to singly accredit. And so the institution needs to have a name, needs to have senior leadership, needs to have some common programs, and all of those are in the process of being delivered in the time frame that was originally articulated. So I just think that they will be pleased that we are naming this at the board meeting next week.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay.
Matt, it's Naomi. I think the branding is going to be essential to this whole operation, and I understand today's not the day for it. Because if we go with the letters where we go with the letters for all the system and campuses in our university system, we got a lot of C's, S's, and U's. And so I just put that on the table for future consideration.
Absolutely, Naomi. The branding is going to be critical. And I think today what we're doing is recognizing that this will be the official name of the institution, that it is Connecticut State Community College. And I think it recognizes that there will be one institution, and the institution will be the Community College of the state of Connecticut. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot more work to be done, and we have time to do that. And I think we will be having a lot of participation as we move that forward, as we should. But thank you.
Well, and the other thing I would say is that the community colleges as a system, when they were a system, had a great tagline that maybe people should reconsider, and it was education that works for a lifetime.
Maybe we'll put you on the committee, Naomi.
No, I didn't choose it. I just know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think David's trying to be heard, but he needs to be unmuted. Can somebody unmute David?
I don't have the power to do that, but I certainly look forward to hearing his comments.
So do I. Aaron, can somebody?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Do you know how difficult it is to be forcibly muted and I can't speak?
So just I have a couple of questions. I think that's a great name, and I am comfortable with the due diligence and the consulting that you've received. In this proposed, I have a number of comments about the resolution, but in relation to the title or the new name of the college, do we need to identify, or will we identify elsewhere that each community college will retain? I think that the plan is that each community college will still retain its name as a, for lack of a better word, a branch of the Connecticut State Community College. The way I read the resolution sort of leaves that unexplained, or perhaps will imply to some that the local name of each community college is dissolved.
So I think what I would say to that is that the next phase of this process will be driven by the local campus and the local community to make recommendations on, what they should either continue to be called, or if they want to change their branding individually. Those are conversations that are going to, happen in the future. But each campus will have a distinct name that may or may not continue to be the name that they currently have, depending on what their process yields back to the board.
I think. Okay. And do we want to say something along those lines? That this is the name of the college, with each location to further review its own branch name?
Well, they will review the branch name and they will make recommendations then through us to you. I mean, if they, this is going to have to be a board. This is a governance role, and so the board will have to make the ultimate determination on the names of the local community branches. Now, it may be exactly the same with some variation of where Connecticut State falls in that. So those are some of the branding and naming exercises that we will go through over the next couple of years. Until the institution is accredited, the name of the institution that currently exists remains the same. So there's no changes until the single institution is accredited over the next couple of years. I mean, we can put another whereas to say that there will be a process in place if you're more comfortable doing that, David.
I
Well,
think that's a good
begs the
idea.
question.
I agree with David.
Yeah, I think it begs the question. Look, the process you just described is perfectly fine. I have no issue with that. I'm just saying we're not putting it in there, and so it leaves it leaves it open to the reader that, well, I guess all these other names fall by the wayside, and you're saying no, they don't. There's a plan for that. So I just think it would answer that question in a proactive way if we had a whereas clause on that next step.
We can definitely add that, David. Thank you.
Okay. And I don't know that, I think you're focused right now on this conversation on the name. When ready, if you want to have my feedback on the resolution, I do have some comments on the resolution.
We're looking to move the resolution today, correct?
To the board, correct.
So if there are any modifications to be made now, we'd want to consider amendments before we vote at this level, right?
Well, are we voting on it, or do we just sort of recommend it to the full board for its vote?
Well, you have to, you're voting to move it to the full board. Just like a committee, just like a finance committee or academic and student affairs, you're moving the resolution forward to the full board for consideration.
Okay.
So we could do a couple of things. One would be to incorporate some additional language into into an amended version that we adopt today. Another would be to adopt it as presented, but direct management to clarify various things about the implementation of this in the planning presentation that would accompany, the staff report that would accompany this in the advanced materials and presentation.
Mr. Chairman, this is Alice. There's a single sentence in the staff report that might lend itself to a whereas if you wanted such a sentence today.
That would be?
It's right before the recommendation in the staff report. There's a sentence that says today's proposal only calls for the naming of the single accredited college while the campus identification and marketing processes and strategies will happen in the future. I don't know if that would do the trick. And you could add and until such time all current campus names remain unchanged or something to that.
That do the trick, David?
Yeah, I'm not going to wordsmith it. I think that as long as you address the next step there in some form, that's fine. And I don't know that we need to land on the language today, as long as we have consensus that it makes sense to incorporate some version of what Alice just read for the full board.
That makes sense, David. Thank you.
Okay. The other comment that I had, and this relates back to our prior conversation, I do think that there is an opportunity in the third whereas clause to be more pointed to the fact that under the Connecticut statute, section 10A-6, which I have right in front of me, the Board of Regents does have, among various responsibilities, it is charged with developing statewide policy and guidelines for the Connecticut system of public higher education, to merge or to close institutions within the Connecticut State University system, among many other responsibilities. So my suggestion, and I leave it to the consensus here, but is that we could be more pointed about the fact that student first and what we're doing, which is resulting in the naming of this community college for the state of Connecticut, falls on all fours in the authority that's vested in the Board of Regents under 10A-6. Because I believe that comments that are made at times by the media and by the faculty unions perhaps blur or attempt to blur that mandate that we have. And so I think this is an opportunity to make it clear that we deem this not only within our authority, but we're mandated to do this, to be diligent and active in ensuring that our system is viable and responsive to student needs.
Thank you, David. We can definitely look at putting that in the resolution. I also think that at the time of the board meeting, we have a number of students first related actions to take. And as part of that, I think it was my intention to recommend perhaps an overarching resolution reinforcing everything you just said.
That's terrific, Mark. So certainly, I'll rely on your judgment, your better judgment as to where this lies, whether it's in this resolution or in another, so long as it happens contemporaneous. I think it makes the point.
Thank you, David.
Mark, it's Naomi. I think we could solve the problem by saying in the minutes of this meeting that the board adopted the resolution with the understanding that there would be edits that clarified the process for naming of campuses and the requirements mandated to board members under the statute for taking these actions. And then, because no novel is written by 6 people, then you can wordsmith it, you could send it around, you could run it by David, whatever you want, so that what comes to the board would be essentially this resolution with the edits.
That's a good question, Naomi. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Erin. I just want to make sure that I've captured Regent Cohen's suggestion to include in the minutes and note that the board adopted the proposed resolution with the understanding that there would be edits clarifying the process for naming of the college campuses and the requirements mandated to board members under the statutes for taking these actions.
I would take out
Erin,
the
I
word
think she said,
that's fine.
I thought you said executive committee. In other words, when it goes to the board, it's going to be in its final form with you folks
Correct.
doing the edit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The executive
I thought,
committee.
Merle, that when they do the edits, if they want, they can send it around to the executive committee for input, or we as individuals could send them suggested language. They could speak with David, whatever process they use to get us to the edited version for the board meeting. And people who want to see it should let Mark and others know that they want to see it before it goes to the board.
Okay, are there other, Aaron, I think you've captured it. Thank you. Are there other comments or questions? I think the clarifying discussion is useful and important. It will be very, very easy for this action to be misunderstood as one that necessitates people to go order business cards and signage changes and things today, and that is not the case. So I'm sure the management team will have your hands full clarifying those things. So these amendments to the language won't hurt in that regard, along with your continued communications efforts. You know, I think what you've landed on, speaking for myself, is what I suppose one might call a compromise solution, but it is necessitated by the bridge that we're crossing here, the need to honor the traditions of the system and the values of the system, and also the imperative to look forward. And I think there are actually very exciting ways in which this can play out as the system takes shape, and ultimately the branding of the system and the perception of our colleges evolves over time, while their services remain, you know, as deeply valued at the community and state level as they are. So let's call the vote on this, which again is to recommend to the full board in our role as members of the executive committee. All in favor? Aye.
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 I think I heard everybody, but for the record, is anybody abstaining or opposing? Okay, so the resolution's approved. Thank you. All right, the committee is going to next move to executive session for purposes of discussion concerning pending litigation. As usual, no votes are taken in the executive session. We ask some members of the team who are involved in the matters at hand to stay. President Rajakian, Dr. Pritchard, Councilor Weaver, Andy Kripp, and Aaron Fitzgerald. There'll be no discussion, action, or votes by the committee following the executive session. So to anyone who's not involved in this, thanks for joining us today. We bid you farewell. I'll now ask for a motion to go into the.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So the motion carries, and we move to executive session. And before you all dial off or dial on, Aaron, what's the process here?
We are requesting everybody that's on the phone that is not a member of the executive committee or that you haven't expressly directed to remain to hang up. I will give it a minute or so, waiting for everybody to hang up, and I'll expel any calls that remain other than the individuals noted. We're in the process of doing that now. Thank you. So executive committee members stay on the line.